And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Paracave podcast is someone who I enjoy listening to on the radio, called Rugby League. He loves the game of rugby league. He is a South Sydney supporter. I won't hold that against him. That's all good. But I want to hear his stories about his support of rugby league and the South Sydney Rabbitohs. So welcome to the Paracave podcast, Mr. Anthony Maroon.
Mate, it's about time you asked me to come on. You're always asking me, can so-and-so come on? Can so-and-so? I thought, when's he going to ask me? So, mate, it's great. It's been, going for about 10 years now? You're killing it.
Yeah, probably about 3 or 4, but loving it. So finally, welcome. So going back, growing up, how did you fall in love with the game of rugby league? What would be your first rugby league memory?
Well, mate, I suppose, Troy, I grew up in Redfern in the inner city, and I was schooled around there. And, in the 70s, there wasn't a lot of, just everybody around Redfern, Waterloo played rugby league. So there was I never heard of Aussie rules, I don't think, and soccer or football, if you like. While it was a community with a big ethnic population, it just was really rugby league based community. So I played with, as I always say, Waterloo Waratahs, who were the Parramatta colours.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was never any good, mate, to be honest. I had a cousin who played first grade footy, and I had other cousins that were good at it, but it just wasn't I just wasn't any good, but I still played.
Yeah. What position did you play?
Mostly, mate, sometimes I'd be on the bench all the time, and sometimes I'd be that far down the bench, mate, I might not even get a jumper. I need somebody to, remember one year there, a few of the blokes got the mumps. One bloke was over in Greece seeing his grandmother, his yaya, as he called her. And so I think that year, I might have got a start. But, mate, the sad truth is, mate, I rarely got a start. You can look at that now and laugh, but at the time it wasn't funny.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, as I mentioned, you're a proud South Sydney fan. Obviously, growing up in Redfern, that's probably where it all the support started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I live virtually across the road from Redfern Oval. So, it was Redfern Oval pretty much every Sunday to watch and play. And I have to say, Troy, that some of those years they were slim pickings, like 75, 76, 77. In 77, we only won 3 games. And then 78, Jack Gibson came. And then the first trophy I ever saw Souths win was in about 81 when they won the Midweek Cup. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Midweek Cup, but it's been a great journey, mate. But certainly, I miss those golden years, and I feel like we're living them again now, though.
Yeah, I do remember the Midweek Cup. I was a National Panasonic Cup man, but not an Amco Cup fan, or watched that one back then. But who were your favourite players growing up to watch?
Yeah, well, I had my favourite player was a Rabbitohs winger named Terry Fay, who they used to call the Redfern Express. And as the story goes, and this is a true story, Troy, too, myself and one of my cousins, whose name's Adam, we got the opportunity to meet Terry Fay once at training. And, mate, it wasn't like it is now. We went up to say good day to Terry Fay in the grandstands at Redfern Oval. And can you believe he told us both to F off?
Oh, wow.
But I was absolutely, mate, I was speechless. But I'm led to believe that's not Terry's usual behaviour. And I have met him since, and he's a lovely man.
Did that look at the time? Did that sort of turn you off him?
Mate, I don't know. I was kind of so stunned, And
Yeah.
then my cousin said, Terry Fay just told us to F off. He didn't say F. He said the word.
Yeah.
And, but I think somehow we put it in the back of our minds till we were old enough to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
I still haven't dealt with
it. What about? Excuse me. What about some of your favourite all-time South Sydney players, even just recently?
Well, I have to say, mate, my all-time South Sydney favourite Rabbitohs player still plays in the NRL, but he doesn't play for Souths, and that's Adam Reynolds.
Okay, yep.
Adam Reynolds, to me, he encompasses everything that the Rabbitohs are. He was a local boy. cheeky little halfback. Come through the grades, playing in, the Newtown area or the Rabbitohs area, lived in Waterloo. His father's a friend of mine, so I'm a bit biased. But he's a kid who's that old school, come through the grades with the club, make it to the top, take the club to a premiership, break point scoring records. Wonderful kicker of all different aspects of kicking. And I have to say, mate, Adam Reynolds, living legend. And, I know I'm old enough to be his father 10 times over, but he's my all-time favourite.
And going back to last year when the club was going through all that signing drama, South Sydney, and they didn't sign Adam Reynolds and they let him go to the Broncos. As with him being your favourite ever Rabbitoh, how did that make you feel?
Oh, look, I was devastated, but I had to, as devastated as I was and as upset as his father was, and as I say, his dad's a mate of mine, I kind of took the view that I'll just go with what's best for Adam, and he seemed to think the best thing for him was to go to the Broncos. And by all reports, he's a natural-born leader up there, and he does love living in Brisbane, mate. He's up there living on a river, and he's got all the bits and pieces. I think he's got a boat and a jet ski. And so, look, mate, that's rugby league in the modern era, isn't it? I mean, you blokes have been through it this year. You see Reid Marnie go, and, that probably breaks your heart a bit. But in the modern game, I think that's just how it is.
Yeah, no, unfortunately it is. And we wish Adam all the best in the Broncos this year. And he certainly had a great year last year, a few injuries, but he did have a great season last year. Now, there's been some great South Sydney moments from over the years. Obviously, the Bob McCarthy intercept try, I was going to say Scott Sattler, the John Sattler broken jaw in the grand final.
Yeah.
To more recently, the four Burgess brothers playing in the one game. And who you just mentioned, Adam Reynolds running down Chrissy Sando.
Yeah.
What have been some standout moments for you, South Sydney moments?
Well, look, my first standout moment came when I was 18, Troy. I'm 56 now. So, you'd be old enough to remember back then, if teams finished equal fifth, you'd play it off midweek.
Yeah.
And in 84, they had to play Canberra. They beat Canberra. Then they had to play Manly, and Manly were up 14-0. Got back to 14-all, Souths did, and then won the game. And for me at the time, that was the equivalent of winning the premiership, because I thought they were gone that day, and any sort of older South player would remember that. And then, mate, I go to the grand final, and I used to say, oh, you know what, I just want to see him play the grand final. I don't really care if they win or lose. And then that day in that grand final, Troy, you know what it's like, mate? It's like the grand final. It's like it goes forever. It's like the Bathurst 1000. And we were up 6-0. Then it got to 6-all. Then we got to 8-6, and then you remember Burgess just burst through the middle, and he put it under the post. So I thought to myself, we might have this mob. We're going to win the premiership, and they really did kick on that day. So I'd have to say that Burgess try.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a cracker. Talking about that game, what are your memories of that night? Obviously, the Burgess try there, but that memory against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, look, it was an amazing night, Troy. I felt a sense of relief, really, that I'd seen it. I didn't have this elation that I needed to do backflips or I just had this sense of like, it's done. We've done it. Now we move on and thank God. So, but on that particular night, mate, I had to get, soon as the siren went, I had to get into a taxi. That a taxi was waiting for me, a car to take me back to the juniors, which is a club here in area I live. And I had to be up on stage on this balcony waiting for them to come. So I was didn't have time to.
Yeah.
And then I got to there and I got up on the balcony and there was people everywhere, and Luke Keary, another one of my favourite South players, he comes up, he grabbed me, he turns me around, he's already had a couple of drinks. He said, what the F's just happened? The elation on his face. And, oh, mate, it's just a wonderful club. And I guess like your club, as long as, to me, they're competitive every year and you're only hearing good things, not bad. Because we both know, we've both been through that when your club's not traveling well from within.
Yeah.
So when your club's healthy, it's making grand finals, it's making finals. You know what? If it's turning out great individuals and great people, sometimes that's enough for me.
Yeah, well, what is that your advice for, say, for myself, for long-suffering Parramatta fans who haven't won a comp in 37 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I waited longer than that. You know, and I've got to, I kind of feel like, you know, Parramatta fans, I say it to my mates who follow Para for a joke, but look, the club's been very successful. You made the grand final last year. You made the grand final in 09. I really feel it's only a matter of time before they win another one. And, you know, if I was one of the current players, I'd go, listen, mate, I wasn't even born then. I'm doing my best. Let's just try and win it this year. Don't worry about how long ago it was since you won it. The poor old North Sydney Bears never won it since
That's it.
1922.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah, it's we got close last year, and as you said, hopefully those players that played last year have that motivation for this year and make their own history. Going back to those bad times, and sort of the bad times in 1999 when South were removed from the competition, I always thought that all the original teams should have stayed. But how difficult a time was that for you, not having a team to support? Well, you still supported the team, but you didn't have a team in the competition.
That was a funny thing. That it was like, you know, I was still in the Gong working for Win, and it was a little bit like you were in a relationship that you took for granted, you know, and then that's what it was like for me in South. It had got to that, and then they got kicked out. So I said to myself, I said to my wife, from now on, I'm going to do everything I can do to help. I can't obviously play or coach, but I went to all the rallies and the marches and dinners and everything. And we marched and we went to court. Did all that stuff. And I made my kids go to a lot of that. Finally, we get back in. And, you know, it's been a great lesson for my children who are now adults, because it's like they can see firsthand what happens if they stand by what they believe. March the streets, fly the flag. Their team comes from absolutely nowhere, gets back into the comp. But if you remember, Troy, it's a little bit more of a worse basket case than ever those first couple of years. Then the club gets privatised. I'm on the voting side that's voting, yes, let's privatise.
Yeah.
And I don't know that people really know what had to happen that day. We all had to go to 2006. We all had to go to ANZ Stadium, Accor Stadium, and we had to win the vote by 75%. So we had to have 3 in every 4 votes. And we just got there. So on that day in 2006, the club was privatised, only won by a handful of votes. So it really makes me feel part of it. And from then on, as you'd be aware, mate, as a mad footy head, they've played in 8 prelims, 2 grand finals, and 1 a premiership. I think we might have missed the 8 3 times, 4 times since the privatisation. So by anyone's calculation, it was the right thing to do. Believe it or not, around here, we still have people that don't think that. But it's just been wonderful to be part of it and to be made to feel part of it and to be, you know, much like you are, like, you know, everybody in footy kind of knows you and they know that you're the Para Caveman. And it's a good feeling that you've stuck solid with what you've believed for so long, you know, so take the good times with the bad, don't you, really?
Oh, definitely. And obviously that first night back in the competition, that was a proud, magical night for yourself.
Yeah, it was, mate. I was sitting there with the great Mikey Robbins. We got flogged, but it didn't matter, mate. You know, those first couple of years back, it was a real basket case. And I often think, Troy, much like I thought with the Dolphins, you know, I have an argument that maybe the Dolphins needed 1 more year to get back to come in,
Okay.
And at that time, I thought the Rabbitohs rushed themselves back in. So it's a big process, because if we say winning starts at the front office, well, we need to get the front office in order before we worry about what's going on the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, speaking of privatisation, have you ever met Russell Crowe?
Many times, mate. Yes.
Yeah.
Many, many times. Yes.
Have you
Yes.
got a funny story about Russell?
Um, Look, I don't go out with him or socialize with him or that sort of thing, but he's always he's a good fella, Russell. He's very open and honest, and he's lovely very approachable to all of us. I suppose my favourite story of him is, for those few of us who were there on that day in 2006 when we privatised the club, he gave a speech that was an Academy Award winning. And I think if anyone was undecided that day, they certainly decided to go on Russell's side. But he's a Rabbitohs man through and through. I don't see him as much anymore. I guess he's busier. And obviously with the Triple M schedule, I'm a lot busier. Yeah, look, mate, he's done everything and more he said he would for South. So any South supporter I think every South supporter owes everything to him and to Nick Pappas and to Shane Richardson and to anyone who was around the club at that time, because, you had to wrestle the club out of the old firm, and it wasn't easy, mate.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Well, you just mentioned Triple M there, so a quick switch to your commentary work with
Mm.
Triple M. What's your favourite part about calling the games for Triple M? I mean, it's a dream job.
Yeah, it is. Look, it's I don't know. I'm old enough, Troy, to not take it for granted. So I always go prepared. I'm always prepared. I'm always on time. And yeah, look, I'm old enough to not take it for granted. And like you, mate, I love the footy. So to be paid to go to the footy and call the footy, it is a dream job. But look, I've had 35 years or something in radio now. I first called a game, the old Illawarra Steelers, when I was working
Yeah,
for Win. So what happened there, mate, was I was at Win calling for them, for the radio station, their radio station. The old Steelers became the Dragons, and I was still there, and then came to Triple M to work on a night show, and then not long after they got the Monday night rights. So I was back into it again. So I think this is the 10th. We might be going into the 10th or 11th year of
okay.
full-time calling footy on Triple M. So it's great, mate, but it's like anything. I can't stress the importance of someone like me to not take it for granted, because at the end of the day, I'm probably the worst rugby league player the world's ever seen.
And are you back calling games this year? And are you back at grounds calling games this year?
Yeah, look, we're going to we've got a lot of games this year, mate, because as you know, there's another team.
Yep.
And there's a commitment to some of these trials, like the World Club Challenge, obviously, Charity Shield All-Stars, then the extra team. I think Triple M's committed to call every Titans, Redcliffe, and Broncos game. So it's a big commitment. I've got to call 70 games this year. And
Yeah, well.
in terms of where we do the games, it kind of, the truth is, mate, if it's a good venue, like Bank West, what do they call Bank West now? CommBank?
CommBank, yeah. CommBank
That's a
Stadium.
great venue. The boys love going there. ANZ or Penrith. Obviously, Suncorp. Some of the venues, though, they're really not up to scratch for. That's just my view for
Yep.
broadcast facilities, e.g., Brookvale and Leichhardt. Given the choice, I won't go to those if I don't have to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And speaking of not going to the games, during the COVID period, how challenging was it to call rugby league off a TV screen?
Oh, mate, it's not that hard, Troy. Like, I mean, say you look at Para run on a TV screen. Junior Paulo, Mitch Moses, you know who they are.
Yeah.
So again, sometimes it's easier off the screen. The only time it gets hard is sometimes you'll be going, here's Moses, he's got away from one, and then they'll pan to the bloody sideline, and you don't know what's going on. Or I have had this other time where there was just a blackout for about 10 seconds. So I just gibbered away, and eventually it came back on.
Yeah. Yeah, nah, but I mean, obviously you prefer to be at the grounds, calling the game
Yeah,
live.
absolutely, mate, and getting the free pies and the free free sandwiches.
Yeah, that's it. Well, speaking of one of your stable mates at Triple M, Gussie Warland, he's a mad Rooster supporter.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you guys have a bit of banter between each other when the Souths and Roosters play?
We do. Well, we used to. I don't see him so much anymore, but I love Gus. He's a very,
Oh, he's a
very
legend.
good human being, And not everyone in radio is, but he is. He's just a genuinely good human being. Troy, the first time I met him, I've been at Triple M for 100 years, but I had to leave for 3 years and go to this other shithole. And while I was over there, I went to watch a Souths Roosters game, and I was in a corporate box, and he was in a corporate box right beside. And he leant over and said something to me, and I thought, this bloke's an absolute turd. And wouldn't you know it, the Roosters flogged South that day. But not long after that, I was back at Triple M, and look, he's a great guy. Does a lot of work for charity, and he's a real radio stalwart now. He's been around for a long time, and yeah, look, we do have a little bit of fun, a little bit of banter. When Matty Johns was there, Matty used to say, "Give it to him, give it to him." Give it to him when you go on. Give it to him. So I used to, yeah.
You haven't made any outlandish bets, like if the Roosters win, you've got to get a tattoo, or a Roosters tattoo, or anything like that, like MG and Gus have done?
Mate, if I had a Roosters tattoo, my father would be turning in his grave, Troy.
Yeah, I don't blame you, but